teach us about.
All right,
But
all right,
definitely
all right.
excited to have you here. So before you start, we just like to get to know a bit about your design background, and then you have the floor after that, if that's fine.
All right. For
Thank
those that like
you.
to see me, so this is me. All right. So my name is Micheal Emmanuel. I'm a product designer at Number. All right. So before design, I'd worked for I think over 5 years in marketing comms. Right. So I worked in experiential marketing and then advertising at the point before I moved into product design. Right. So that's basically me, actually. Nothing exciting about me. Just a random guy that likes design and that likes design more. So that's me. That's me, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But that's, you're not just a random guy. You just told us now that you have 5 years experience in marketing at least. I'm sure that was useful in design.
You want me to go? Okay, let me give you a bit of my background there. All right.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I started off as an account executive where I
Yeah.
worked with. So I moved from account executive to a brand manager to a creative strategist. So I
Mm-hmm.
worked with brands like, for some people that are familiar with brands, so I worked with Pernod Ricard. So under Pernod Ricard, you have Jameson, you have Martell, you have Chivas. I worked with P&G for some of the people that know them. And then from there, I moved into product design. And I started working from an agency side where I
Okay.
work. Agency can be very crazy, and that's the honest truth. So when I see designers from the agency side, I respect them a lot because you can be doing so many things at the same time. As a
Yeah.
designer, and doing so many things at the same time, you most likely might be losing focus on other things. There are times where I work on 3 projects almost at the same time, and you have to deliver almost at the same time also. So like,
Mm-hmm.
but that particular like period, like molded me for this particular one I'm actually doing at Number, right?
Yeah.
So, but somebody wrote senior designer and humility. I'm not a senior designer. Please, I'm a normal designer like everybody else. I don't want to
It's
put
still
senior
humility.
or no, it's not humility. It's just normal, right? Like I feel like, anyways, whatever it is, I think I'd rather just be this kind of person, right, than
Yeah.
anything else. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll just let you move to teaching us about design processes. Then
Yeah, I'll do that. All right. So let me just start. So how many minutes do I have?
okay, 30 minutes.
Okay, 30 minutes. I'll see how I can just do this. Okay, so hi everyone. Like I said, I'm Micheal Emmanuel. The fun thing about me is I don't eat fish and I like to dip my bread in tea. So that's the fun thing about me. So when you see me outside and you dip your bread in tea, I'm the guy, right? So I want us to leverage the comment section, right? Because we're gonna have like conversations before the session ends. So I just want us to like put there like how many years of experience do we have? Like just put it there. So for some people it's 6 months, for some people it's 8, some people it's 1 year, 2 years. So just leverage the comment section in just less than 1 minute. Can we just put it there? Just how many years of experience you have, just drop it. I just want to see, the people I'm dealing with. So I'm waiting, please, as fast as we can. Okay, 4 months, um, 1 month. Okay, let's keep it coming. It's just a matter of tapping your keyboard. 2 months. I just graduated from Pixels 3 months, 1 year plus 1 month. Again. All right, nice. 2 years. Okay, I think that's the highest I've seen here right now. Okay. So I have about 31 people on this call. But that's massive. Yeah, massive, yeah, actually, because I don't do this. All right, so let's move on. Thank you guys for throwing that in. Right. I just wanted to know the people I'm dealing with. All right. So let's move into the class or the talk fully. So it's like a conversation between us. So let me share my screen. Allow bra. Okay. So let me know if you can see my screen. If you can see my screen, just say something. All right. Okay, so cool. So pardon me, I'm gonna have to do this on my other phone so I can see myself. Yes. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. We can.
All right, cool. That's good. Okay. So they told me to talk about understanding design process, right? So one of the reasons why I asked for the experience of a lot of people here is because I want people to understand that understanding design process is not by how long you've been in the space. It's just about you understanding the basics of design, right? And how the entire process is formed. Do you understand? It's something that if you go to product schools, they're most likely going to teach you from the start, right? You don't need to get to that point where, like maybe you've done the work for like 3 years before you understand it. No, it takes like from the start, right? So let's move in. So I'll just create an analogy for you. So this would be like a basis for us to understanding as we move further. So imagine, so let me use a developer. How many of us are familiar with developers that build houses and all of those things? We have developers in Lagos that about cut our head. So now let me use myself as a case study, right? So I'm a developer and I came into Nigeria from the US. And one of the things I realized is it's difficult for people to get, you know, mortgages for housing, right? And I figured it like, why? Why is it like that, right? So, and I decided to, okay, what's the basic thing I need to do first to be able to really get into the depth of this problem? Now, there are certain things that are like, they are just, is a fact, you can't change it, right? There are things that you need to do because there are industry standards, there are everything standards. Those are the principles that govern or guide the decisions you would make through your journey, right? So now one of that is first, for you to understand is the design process is a way of figuring out what you need to do, then do it. You know, along the way, you might solve one or more problem, but try to achieve a goal and or create something specific. The first crucial step to understanding design process is that it is not about working the right way or wrong way. So what this is trying to tell you is there's really no right or wrong. It's just about how you define it, right? There's really no right way or wrong way. It's just about how you define it. So you define the process. Do you understand? You define how you want people to see what you've done. Do you understand? So you are like the captain of the ship. The ship is not the captain of itself. You are the captain of that particular ship. So there's really no design process if there's no you who is able to thought through the entire process that you've gone through, right? So now, like I said, most of us are familiar with this thing. This thing I'm just, that's on my screen. Because if you go to product schools, they'll always bring these things in your head. Or when you talk to products and they'll tell you, oh, empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test. So these are stuck in a lot of people's heads. And it's very good because this is like what guide you through. For most of us who want to become UX designers, right? Like this is very key for us through the journey, right? So you empathize. It's just basically, being there, understanding what the problem is, understanding if there's no problem, okay, how do we create or define the problem before the actual solution, right? So there's an empathy stage, there's a definition stage where you take all of the things that you've done, you've researched, the paperwork, the sticky notes. How do we make sense out of them? How do we ensure that there's like a synergy between all of these jargons that we have on the board? That's definition, right? So now that we've defined it, how do we now create something meaningful out of this definition? How we begin to tie the holes, how we begin to create intersects between what it is now or what it was before and what we want it to be. That's where ideation comes into play, right? That's where you begin to reach out to a couple of your team members, sit down and say, okay, now we've done this research, we have all of these answers, we've done analysis, we've done quantitative analysis, we've done all of these jargons right here. how do we now begin to make sense? How do we ideate? How do we come up with a proper solution to this problem? That's where ideation comes in. So now you've created the solution, right? You have the solution staring at you on the board, but that's not enough. How do you visually represent those solutions to people so that they understand your school of thought, your process, your rationale, and where you're coming from? And that's where prototyping comes in. That's where you begin to create visual representation of your solutions, begin to play with screens like your mock-up as we do. And then after that, it's not enough to now have those screens. How do you ensure, how do you, make yourself proud and say, oh, I did the right thing? That's where testing it out comes into play, like sending it out there for people to use, so you see, okay, yeah, is this acceptable? Is this scalable? Is it adoptable? Is this something that will work? Is it currently working? Is there a problem between, that's where testing comes into play. So I know we are used to this particular thing, and which is very good because these are the basics of the entire design process that we need to talk about, right? So let's go. So now there are two things I want to talk about. First is the design stages, and secondly is the design process. Now, the design stage are basic principles that every designer must know, every designer must follow. Now, the design processes are embedded into your design stages. So I don't know if I just made sense, right? So the stages are like your industry standards, right? So if you want to build your house, ensure that your block has 14 millimeter space. If you want to build your house, ensure that your cement has this particular amount of density. Ensure that if you want to put the iron rod, the density of the iron rod is like this. But how do you form those basic principles is when you need to talk about the sand, the cement, the things that make up the iron, right? That's where the process is. So there are two separate things, but they work together. Right. So I've defined the stages, which is what we did from the onset. Now there's the process of defining the stages that we are in. So now let me take it one step at a time. So from empathy, right? So empathy is really about understanding that there's a problem or there's a need. Understanding that there's actually a really, really big problem here. How do we get into the heart of this problem to understand why it is actually a problem to the people or to me or to the owners of the business? So that's where you move into your design process and begin to think about identifying the problem, which is one thing that we do. Then second thing is to research, right? Before I moved into product design, research has always been a very, very important thing to me. And that's because of my background in marketing comes, right? For every time we needed to sort of create a particular document, a strategy document for a client, we always do something that we call the research to understand who the users are, right? The target audience, to understand, the human behavior, how they think the way they think, why do they think this way? Now we need to understand why would they want to even use the particular product that we're about to push to them or we're about to sell to them. Why should they use it, right? That's where we do a lot of research. For most of us, we had to go into the field. So it wasn't like we had to do a lot of like surveys, like send surveys out. No, we're actually outside because we're dealing with mass markets. We're dealing with people in market spaces. We're dealing with people that go to bar lounge and all of these things. So it was very, very, very key for me. And it built me to understand how research work is done. So that's why I'm really not a fan of let's do survey alone. No, survey for me doesn't even work so much because I always want to be in the heart of the people, to speak to them, to see what they're, to see them, to understand how they feel, what they're thinking, like, how they're reacting when they're answering my questions, their body feel, sometimes people say some things and they sigh, and that's where your mind map comes into play, right? So identifying the problem, research it in depth, ideating possible solutions. Now, ideation comes from this other part where you have like you're defining first, which is where you have the research and all of these things. So you're ideating possible solutions, evaluating and selecting promising solutions. All of these processes fall under ideation, right? Creating a prototype comes under prototype. Now you see how the process and the stages align themselves. Now, testing and troubleshooting is where you have testing it. Now, but one thing that you most likely might not talk about, and I see this is where a lot of us designers will laugh. We think that when we've done the design, that's where it ends. It doesn't end there. It really never ends at your design. you need to follow it through, right? But let's not jump, let's keep moving, right? Like I said, the process should conform to you rather than the other way around. The process in itself should conform to you. So what that means is you drive what the process is. So for a lot of newbies like us, right? You know, when we say a lot of design, and then we always hear people talk about, oh, your process, your process. I used to think your process was one very difficult thing. You know, when people say, oh, I did my case study, and then, you know, I will see very long case studies, and I'll be like, God, when would I get here? You know, when I started, it was like that. But then I sat down with my design mentor at the time, Toby, and then he made me realize that, see, bro, anything you're working on right now, you're the captain of the ship. You tell people what you want them to hear. You show to people what you want them to see. But one thing you must always put into consideration is that you are telling a story, and your story must be able to do two things. Must either excite them or incite them. Right. So your entire design process as it is must be able to capture the minds of those that you want to actually go through it or see it or probably interact with it. So your process is not even as difficult as people make it to look, right? Sometimes go back, sit down and create your own process, but do not neglect the principles that have been laid out for you. Use those principles as your bedrock, but ensure that you create your own story, right? For instance, now you want to put up a case study, and then you want to start from the empathy side, right? Now, a lot of us just go and just say, oh yes, we did research, the user, we did competitive analysis. What happens to the point where you had conversations with your team members and you guys had to argue? What happens to the point where you went, you know, you had a meeting with your stakeholders and they told you, oh no, me, I'm more bothered about my business need. You know, all of those informations are so key that we don't know that they're so key, because we are communicating with people who we want to see how we thought through the solution for them. We need to bring them into the art of the project to understand that it wasn't just two people sitting somewhere and just putting solutions together for you. There were a lot of things that had gone into this. There were a lot of thinking that had gone into this for us to create this particular thing that you need. Right. So design processes are not even limited to digital products alone. They use, see, it's somebody said no audio, please. Is that me? Is that me? Can you guys hear me?
Oh, we can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you. Sorry, I thought it was me. You know, it's not just limited to just design, right? Yeah, other industries, other spaces actually use the same thing. They use it in engineering, they use it in industrial design, right? This particular stage we just talked about is used across every other industry, even in marketing, right? It's used everywhere. So there's really no one way to defining your process, but understand somewhere in your head and have this at the back of your head that there are certain principles that have been placed or laid down for you, which is the principle of empathy, definition, ideation, prototype, and test. Those are principles that you need to follow. But every other process that you create must form themselves into this. Right. And another notion I want to also make you understand is your case study does not need to be 5 or 10 pages before you can communicate to the people that you want to communicate with. Your case study does not need to be 20 pages before you can tell people what you want them to hear or show them what you want them to see. Right. But also you can have 20 pages and you're literally communicating perfectly. You're literally carrying everybody along as to how the entire process was formed. So like I said, there's really no one way to understanding design process. You just need to understand what the basic principles are and how you're able to form a process that suits the particular project that you are working on. Sometimes a process that you're trying to use for a product that has to do with fintech might not exactly be the same process that you're using for a product that has to do with children. But then you most likely would have to follow the basic principles of design. But you can now define your process. Do you understand? Sometimes in ideation, you most likely might not even need to deal with trying to understand your competition. Because sometimes you might never even have a competition. It might just be a new product, a new idea. So what you might have used for a product or a feature that is existing might not work for something that's not been existing at all. So it means that you must define a process that works for that particular thing that you're doing. And that's left to you to do. Do you understand? That's left for you to do. So let's just move on. So sorry, I tried to play words here. So let me break it down. So the first thing to do is to plan, right? Planning is key anywhere in the world, any sector, any industry you find yourself. Planning is very important because so when most people reach out to me, I tell them that what makes you a superhuman in design is your ability to think strategically, right? Because I believe that a large amount of us, yeah, I feel like, yeah, we've gotten too good with UI design, right? We've gotten too good with creating screens, but for some of us, we do not know how to think through those screens. It's easy for us to design the screens, but we don't know how to think through the entire experience that cuts across the screens, right? I've seen a person who designs very well, but then it doesn't. If you tell him to tie the screens together, it's difficult because he doesn't know what should happen or how it should happen. He doesn't know why. Okay, if this button is here, what should happen? What should the user do? Right? That's why I always tell people that when you can think strategically as a designer, and strategically means that you are able to think from the beginning to the end of a project. That's what makes you a superhuman. Right? If you have any question, just drop it at the comment. Just drop it on that comment section. You can always go back to it, right? So that we don't break the class because I don't even have time. I'm most likely going to end very soon, right? So, but planning is very important. So, the first step of the design process is critical for gathering information, requirements, and other data you need in order to make informed decisions later, right? So, depending on the kind of design work you do, the kind of work you do during the planning stage could vary. However, all designers will do some variation of this. First is to define the task, like we all do. You define the problem or define the goal, right? So these are processes inside of those principles that we've laid out, right? Empathy and the likes. So now you define the task or the problem or the goal. There's definition. You must always define it. You must always sit down and because you need to understand what the problem is. You can't just go to the market and assume that you want to become an impulse buyer. You most likely burn your entire money and not even buy one thing that is useful to you. It's the same way it is when it comes to design. You cannot just assume or just do things the way you want because you feel like I'm a badass now. I could design. At the end of the day, design is something that is not useful, that's not needed. What will happen? You come back to the same thing you didn't want to do before. You have to plan. You have to sit down and understand. You have to research the audience or the user. Research is very, very important. Honestly, I can tell you that one time we were going to do a product for market women to access loans, right? And it felt like my guys already had a solution to it because they most likely were depending on an existing or already existing products, how they did it. But then the problem is market women don't even like taking loans. Do you understand? But nobody's going to tell you from the other side of the business that, oh no, we really don't have people accessing loans. But that's a major problem. So I told them, I said, guys, we can't even do this like this. Let's go to the markets. Let's actually go to different marketplaces. Let's understand why these people don't like loans. Or even if they do like loans, how would they want to access it? Are they scared of how banks come to them to get the money? Are they scared that they most likely might lose their businesses? Are they scared that there's too much documentation to do? Are they scared that the collateral might be too high? So we took our time to go to the market to ask questions across board. I mean, from people who had just like 4 to 5 products on their shelf to people who had thousands of products on their shelf. because we have to cater for both the middle ones, the lower ones, and the ones at the top. So when I mean the lower ones are the ones that you most likely will see on your streets, and then the higher ones are the ones that you see at the Dumoto market, right? So we needed to run that perfectly well. And trust me, that little thing that we did opened our mind to other things. Now, it didn't just open our mind to just design. It also opened our mind to sales and marketing. That single particular process that we had to go through. It didn't just limit us to design. It opened our mind to communication, right? The problem for some people in their products might not even be a feature, might not even be the product itself. It might just be an issue with copy, how they communicate, how they tell people about the product. So sometimes the problem you have might not even be your product, but you just assume that everything has to be your product. No, but this is where you know if it's your product or not at this planning stage. So gather as much as you can, research your competitors if you have one. Research, look at what they are doing, create metrics. Don't just go and say, I want to do competitive analysis and just carry someone's app, and create metrics at which you're measuring for. What are you measuring for, right? What are the metrics you've placed? Oh, I'm looking at the conversion rate. I'm looking at the click time. I'm looking at how long it takes from year to year. Let there be certain things you are measuring, right, for your competitive analysis, right? Look at features. This feature, how important is it to this business, right? Do people use these things so much? Check people's review on App Store, on Google Store, right? This is how you gather information about a particular thing you want to work on, right? Write, edit, develop, put sticky notes on the board. This is how planning works. Do you understand? And this is how it works across board, everywhere, every industry, right? It's very key. Have sticky notes on your wall if you want to, on your laptop. Stick them as much as possible. In the planning stage, it never makes sense. I want you to understand that in the planning stage, it never makes sense. It's all up in your face. That's why it's called planning. So that's the first stage. Now, that's the first stage. So let me go again. So now, when you've done all of these things, is when you come to your mockup, right? So this mockup in itself is derived from what you get here at the planning stage. So at the planning stage is where you've done research, all of these things. Now you've moved to ideation, right? You've gone into sitting down with your guys at work to say, okay, guys, we have all of these things. We've gotten this whole thing, but it's not making sense. How do we tie it? How do we create the intersect between the business need and the user need? How do we create that intersect? Because I always tell people this, for the both of them, there's always an intersect. There's always somewhere that they meet themselves, right? So the goal of the business is to make money, right? The goal of the user might be entirely different from making money like the business, but there's somewhere that there's an intersect. And I always do that when I'm working on any product. For me, it's key to always find the intersect, because that intersect might be one of the powerful tools on that particular product. And I do that every time, right? And sometimes when I even do my stakeholder mapping, right? For some people that know how this works, so stakeholder mapping is like, so imagine you have like over 10 stakeholders on a particular product. Sometimes you need to know what they're all thinking, because the truth is stakeholders can be thinking different things. They most likely will tell you we want to work on this product, but they're thinking different things. So you must be able to sit to them and get all the information from them and see how you can map those ones that correlate, the things that sound alike, right? It's the same thing you do for your users too. There's something called user mapping. You do the same thing. I do that also, right? That's where planning, all of these things fall into planning, right? So I'm trying to break that entire process short so you understand how the design process is formed. I don't want to give you a long one, so I've just broken them into this, 3 or 4 things, but then I'm modeling in, right? So there's a part of planning, research, doing all of these things, getting your, solution to your, if you're working with a team, yes. If you're working alone, yes. But let me tell you one thing, if you're working alone on a project and you're trying to do this, always leverage people around you, because you need to act like you're working with a team. Don't think you can do it alone. Sometimes the solution to a problem might not be in your head. Sometimes it might not even be the things that you have on the board. It might just be a conversation with someone relating to what you have on that particular board, on that particular sheet, right? And then someone is able to give you the solution that you need, right? So the next thing you move on to mock up your design visuals, right? So that's why you go to complaints sometimes they'll tell you, oh me, I swear I've never touched design. All I've been doing is strategy documentation. And they'll tell you, oh, this guy is the one that does design, is the one that converts all of these things into one. But for some reason, and God has blessed us, we work in Nigerian companies where you most likely would have to do everything. And that's how it works here, right? So, but then after you've done all of these things, you need to be able to show them visually for people to see what you want them to understand. Because for some people, they might most likely not read your document because of all of these things you've aligned, but they're able to understand it when you represent them visually, right? That's where your screens come in, your mobile screen, if it's a mobile app you're working on, your web pages, if it's a web products you're working on, right? So that's where you have your like your low-fi wireframe where you sketch, right? Even at the point of your sketching your your low-fi wireframe, you can always still get feedbacks. You can always still ask with your team. Even when you sketched it and see, oh, we've sketched 30 screens. Oh, this ties to this ties to this. Right there, right there, you could also even still see that they're most likely going to be an experience problem. Oh, this might not work here. This might work, right? Always ensure that in your entire design process, you're not rigid, right? Ensure that you're flexible. Now, when I mean flexibility is ensure that you leave space. You leave that space for, oh yeah, we didn't figure this out. You can always go back and make adjustments and come back to where you are and then move forward. Don't assume that whatever you've done, that's how it works. That's the best. Somebody asked me a question. Let me see what it is. You said leverage people. Okay. So before I forgot, when you talked about design process, as much as important to highlight all of this for newbies, some of us haven't worked in teams yet, no stakeholders. How best can we approach this? Like I said, leverage people around you, right? So that's that for that. That's very key. It was a nice question you asked actually, but I'm happy that I answered that already, right? So like I said, your mock-up is very key, right? You don't have to be a badass you have to be a badass to design screens. Like I said, we are all work in progress, right? None of us understands the rope of design yet. And I will gladly say this anywhere. There's no boss anywhere. We are all just trying to get our hands on it. We learn every day. We make mistakes, we learn from them, and we move on. But for some people, they've been able to, grab one side of the rope, so they're able to help us through as we sojourn, right? So there's really no borders anywhere. So, but then ensure that whatever you need to represent visually is appealing enough, right? So that's why you need to understand the basic design principles like alignment, colors, imagery, like paddings and all of these things. It's very, very important because you can have very good documentations and your design is shitty. You entirely spoils everything, right? These things happen. I've seen it happen before where we even had an interview not quite long in my office, and then I saw some people, they are very good writers, but then their design is shitty, is poor, and then you don't lose interest, right? So, but let's come back to this guy, right? So design, finalize your design, polish, solutions using design systems that we use, softwares like, your Adobe XD, your Figma for some people, for those people who still use Sketch, AOE, do your thing. So revise your solutions, repeatedly, revise them, then create rough prototypes to evaluate the solutions privately. So you can prototype your screens, share amongst your guys at work. If you work with a team of people, if you don't work with a team of people, you can create multiple pages for those people who helped you through the journey of ideation and just let them, go through each screens. Right there, you can get good quality feedbacks because they're the people you worked with on that particular project. So when you've done all of these things, then you can actually now move to building. That's for people who work in already existing design teams, where you now need to move it from the design team to the development team. Now, this one is very key because this happened to us very recently in my company, right? I realized that as a designer, it's not just enough that you've designed, that you've created documentations, you've talked about what should happen here so that front end or back end understands, back end understands where they need to make integrations, front end understand how they need to design this particular thing to look like your actual design. But that's not enough. You need to follow through till the end. Do you understand? So what I do right now is even while they're designing, I go to my QA guys, I say, guys, how far? What do you think? You send me, oh, Michael, I feel like we have a problem. I'll say, yes, we actually have a problem here. I'll go back to my design, I'll look at it, I'll reach out to the front end guys working on it. I'll be like, guys, I don't think we're getting this thing right. If we do this, we do this, we do this. It creates a room for collaboration. And trust me, if you put a case study together and you talk about how you collaborated with developers, trust me, people want to see that you can work in an actual team. And when people talk about team, they're not talking about just the design team. They're also talking about how you leverage your expertise with developers, with people in sales, with people in marketing. Do you understand? It's very key. Sometimes I'm always very curious. I want to ask salespeople, Alpha, why are you people finding it difficult to use the products when you're talking to people? We say, yes, sometimes we can't move from here to here. Oh, I'll be like, okay, what do we do? Now, because I want to be involved in everything. Now, imagine that I'm creating a case study and I'm talking about my entire design process. And I'm also letting them know about these things that I do on the side, aside designing screens. I'm also letting them know how I relate with salespeople, how I get feedbacks from them. I'm not even talking about my actual users. I'm talking about people in my space who interface with users and give me feedback, right? So all of these things are very, very key, right? So it doesn't end at design. You need to follow through to the development side, where they're actually working on the product, right? For people that use iOS, that's why, there's something called test flights where, that they send like a different environment for you to test as designers on the team and front end, and everybody does use that to test before it actually goes live. So right there, you can give reviews, give feedbacks to your developers. They will see it and always go back to work, right? And then the last thing to do is to measure, right? To measure. See, you don't have there's really no perfect product. That's one truth. But then it's best that you know that your product that you've taken time out to work on, to ideate on, to do everything on is actually meeting the objective at which it was set for. And how do you do that is to measure it. And how do you measure is to create metrics, right? So let me give you an example. We recently designed, so for number, okay, for number, we recently designed a particular page inside our website, right? And while we were designing it, I realized that, oh, this page we're designing is for people to actually read about a particular product that we have and buy it. But then I figured that, okay, we have contact sales, but do I want to put so much pressure on sales? Because if I do that, people have to always call sales every time and every day. How do I ease that stress from sales, whereby they don't need to always be calls at every time to probably talk about, oh, I want to buy. And I began to think about, so if what should my website do primarily? So first is acquisition, right? Bring them on the page, right? Second is to convert them. Now, conversion for me is click, learn more, click, buy now, click. Do you understand? Those things were very key for me, and I introduced them into that page, whereby you don't need to call sales to learn certain things. It's right there in front of you. Just click that button, right? So that's how I measure my own, right? It's conversion. How many people sent an email today to buy? How many people called sales? How many people clicked on contact sales button, right? How many people went down to the part where they clicked become an agent, right? All of these things are very key. Even as we sojourn, there are things called heat maps, right? So there are certain analytics you can actually use in measuring that to know what feature on a particular app users actually click on the most, right? All of these things help you to measure, because trust me, if you create an app or a product and you followed all of the processes that you've laid out, right, and you do not measure the results at the end of the day, trust me, you've just created another product in the bag. You've not created something people need to use, because the reason why we create products is for people to use them and make their lives easier and better, right? But this is the point where it's very important, because for some people, you see when you create your case study, you will now write up something called learnings, right? That learnings that we're talking about here is not, oh, while I was designing, I learned that I needed to communicate with my stakeholders more effectively. That's not enough. That's not what I want to even hear at the end of the day. I want to hear how, when the product went live, there was something you overlooked, and the users were calling it out, and then you had to go to the app store, look at their reviews, got it back, and then you and your team went back to start to work on some little fixes in between. You talk about those things, make it exciting, right? That's because you've gone through all of those processes and you're at this point of measurement, measuring the impact of your product, measuring the impact of the things you've done, gather analytics, run testings again. Like you see, gathering data does not end at research from the beginning. Research does not end from the beginning of the process. It still continues till the end, right? Even while your product is live, ensure that you still run user interviews. Ensure that you still try to get data. That's why you need to test your product even when it's live. Test with your inner circle if you want to, right? If you're actually dealing with a financial technology product, ensure that you can reach out to your sales guys to know how sales is going and how the product has influenced sales. Can a UI UX designer work as a product designer? Honestly, I would have loved to answer this question, but then let me tell you something. Go on Google, read about UI UX design, and read about product design. I don't want it to be on this particular platform. Go and read about it so that you get an in-depth understanding about it, right? I think that would help you the most, because when you go on Google, you actually see a lot of questions about this. Or what's the difference between a UI UX designer and a product designer? Or what's the difference between a UI designer and a UX designer? Google will help you solve this problem easily. Don't stress, don't even bother about it. Just type it on Google and see how this works, right? So now after you measure that, and that's basically all for me. That's basically all your process that you need. That is all that you need inside of your design process. I bet you nothing more, nothing less. There's really no big deal. But one thing is key. Every design project begins with planning, right? Every design project begins with planning. Like I said, it's very, very key, right? But then the beauty in representing your process is in your ability to tell the story how you want it to be told. So when I talk about story, I'm talking about how you want people to see the entire process end to end. Don't come here and give me surface data or surface conversation about how you started the project to the end. No. Do you understand? And there's, like I said, there's really no one way to these things. Don't look at people's design or people's process and assume that that's how it should be. You can create the one that fits you, but ensure that in all of the things that you do not neglect these guys, because these are the principles that you must follow. There are set rules. Empathize, design, define, engage, prototype, test. Then in this, you can now create processes for yourself that would help you in line with the stages that has been created. These are principles that everybody must follow, but ensure that you create your own style. Ensure that you actually create a process that works, that helps you get the solution that you need. I don't know if I'm making sense. Please, I need someone's answer. Am I making sense? Please, so that, because it looks like I'm talking to myself a lot. Yeah.
You're making sense, sir.
All right, thank you. So, like I said, let me just recap, right? The process, like I said, understanding the process, first is for you to understand the stages, which are empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test. You see where you have empathize is where you need to, identify what the problem is, reach out. Oh, this is the problem for you. Oh, mad. Oh, what can we do better? Now go to definition stage, define, start your research, right? Begin to do your research, usability testing for other products that you think are out there to see if this is actually a problem on other people's platform or other people's products, or it's just a thing about your own product. That's why you do all of these things. Put sticky notes, get all the information that you need, right? Ideation is where you begin to run them into, the solution is this, is that. Begin to run your user journey. You begin to run your user flow, create user stories that align with the solution. All those things that you already think in design, all those mind mapping, all those things that people tell you and it's exciting you, right? This is where you begin to put it into play in between ideation and definition. That's where those things begin to work. and ensure that after you've done those things, master your UI design skills. Please, it's very, very important. I beg you, don't become so. If you leave Nigeria and go outside, yes, you can decide to go and sit down somewhere in bookings.com or Google and just be someone who likes to, research, find solutions, strategize. But if you know you're going to work in Nigeria, ensure that this your UI skill, you still try. Do you understand? You can still translate all of these things that you've defined or analyzed or ideated on into proper screens for people to use. Please, it's very, very key, right? So I think in all of these things I've said, I hope I've not been able to convince you, not confuse you, but convince you that the design process that you need to understand is dependent on how you are able to translate it for people to. English is messed up, but anyway, I hope you understand where I'm coming from, right?
Very well, very well.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Let me leave you guys here. Honestly, I enjoyed this session. I would really love to do more with you guys. Trust me, like I really love to do more. I hate talking actually. I don't like being in the spotlight, but I know one day we'll do it here. So now for your close shop, Charlie. Right. Thank you so much, guys. If you have questions, you can still drop it. I'm here. I'll still answer.
Okay. So that was really, really nice. Thank you so much, Michael.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm sure like we all learned one or two today. I can see people still raising their hands up, still trying to ask one or two questions. I
You're
can
free.
see, yeah, let me Asogwa. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. But
Yeah, you got it right. Thank you.
okay. All
Mr.
right.
Manuel,
So
Mr. Manuel, thank you very much for this epic section. It was very educating. I just have a very quick question. Recently, I got a role to lead a group of designers to create a new product. Okay, so I just want to ask, this is my first time actually designing an actual product and also leading other designers too. So if you were in my shoe, how would you approach this new responsibility?
So
Thank
first
you.
for me, I would yes, okay. So for me, first is to understand our individual strengths, right? Because that's the first thing that a leader needs to do. You need to understand the people you're working with, understand their strengths, understand where they fit better, right? Because we could all be designers, but I most likely might be good with actually putting together things that we need to get the solution that we need to design for, right? So let me give you an example. Currently, at my place of work, people don't just see me as a designer or a product designer, right? I just completed a, a product shoot for our image bank. It was a thing that I had to do, right? And that's because of my strength from where I used to be before I came into product design. So first, as a leader, you need to identify their strengths. And secondly, it's your duty to ensure that there's clarity when working on that product. There's clarity. You need to ask the right questions from whosoever has given you the products to work on, right? So it's not enough that you have people that want to work. It's very key that the people that want to work with you understand what they are working on. So that's your duty as a leader to ensure that you ask the right questions. Like I said, whatever I said here about design process is what you need to ask whoever you're going to work with. That's where you are able to identify your problem or identify what you need to work on and then get the people along, right? Sometimes the person tells you, I want to work on a product. You need to ask, have they done the necessary research? Have they done the necessary things? Do they have a document for you to look through, right? Or is it just an idea in their head? Because if it's an idea in their head and they're expecting you to just go and design, you most likely you carry your guys and you start designing and you will come back to the same thing, right? At that point, you know what the problem is. Ask your guys, okay, so how do we do this? This is what the problem is. What do we do better? Do you understand? Someone tell you, oh, I think I can, I can work on the research side, right? Because I'm very sure not all of you there are UI designers. Not everybody there is as strong as you think they are. Not everybody there is as strong as a designer that you think they are. For some people, they're really, really good with research work. For some people, they're really, really good with analyzing the difference between what you want to work on and what currently exists. Do you understand? sometimes you might even be the strongest designer on that team.
Yeah.
Do you get? So for someone like you, who this space, this activity is very, very new to you, you are the leader on the team, and it's your responsibility to ensure that you do everything possible to make everybody's life on that team easy.
Awesome.
I don't know if I've answered you.
Yeah, that was on point. Thank you very much.
All right. Any other question, please?
Okay, so in order to respect Emmanuel's time, please, I'll just like that if we have questions, we could just drop it in comment section because we are trying to round up by 8 as well, so that our speaker can get to do other things he needs to do. So if you have a question, now would be a great time to put it in the comment section. Or if you would like to just ask your question quickly, we could just go straight to the point. So you could raise your hand if you still have questions. Okay, so if nobody is asking a question, so Emmanuel, I'd like to ask, so now that we understand that we have design processes and we need to follow through on all of that when we are working on projects, how do you ensure that, like, when you are working on projects, even when you hit roadblocks, you still make use of those processes that you need to? How do you communicate that effectively, especially when writing case studies?
Okay, so let me give you a secret. Let me tell you something I do, right? So when I'm about to work on a project, freelance, right? So I always put it on my wall. So you see those 5 things: the empathy, the definition, the ideation, the prototype, and the test. So I put the sticky notes separately, 5 of them, 4 of them, in case I don't know what works. I put them on like different sides of my wall. Underneath that, I'll have smaller sticky notes. I do that. Then under empathy, I'll begin to put in those little things that I want to do there, right? Same thing when I move to the ideation state, definition state, I'll begin to put those little sticky notes I need to do there. When I get, so I do that for all of them, I do those things. So at any point I hit a roadblock, it's easy to identify where, right? Sometimes you hit a roadblock with being sure that the feature or the solution that you've created works, or the feature or the solution you created is the right one. That's what mostly sometimes happens to me, right? I'll design this particular thing, and then I'll probably reach out to a couple of friends and say, okay, guys, when I was doing this, I got to this point, and they'll be like, oh, but I don't think this is actually a big deal now. This might not be a solution. Have you thought about this? Now, when they say, have you thought about this, I'll be like, okay. And I'll begin to identify at what point would this have made sense if I've done it. Then I'll go back to those things and see, oh, it have made sense in my definition state, right? So what I do is I go back to my definition state and add that thing as a sticky note. Go back to that process and see how I can walk it through to get back to this point and move on from there. Do you understand? So even when I'm putting together my case study, right? See, you cannot don't create, see, please, another thing I need people to understand is some of us are in a rush to have case studies. We're so in your hurry to have case studies that we do not calm ourselves down to understand everything that needs to go into it. You're just too quick to have case studies, have a portfolio, get a job. But then you've forgotten that there's somebody out there who will most likely carry these things and read. There's somebody who will most likely look through it and want to make sense out of it, but is unable to. Because all you're bothered about is just to write something and really not provide the right solution that is required for the product. Right? So sometimes when you hit rock bottoms, always go back to those things that you analyzed. See, putting them in front of you will help you a lot. I always say this: have that board, have your board or your wall, have sticky notes, put them there. It will help you through. Do you understand?
Yeah,
Completely.
definitely.
Completely, I get you.
All right, then.
Yeah. So does anybody have any other question? Guys, we have about 4 to 5 minutes to the end of the session. So if you have a question now, this is the best time to ask. And if you don't want to speak for any reason, you could just write your question in the comment section. In the meantime, Emmanuel, I'm sure many people have questions, but they probably are shy or they don't want anybody to see them asking any question in the comment section. So would it be nice to probably tell us your social handles in case anybody wants to reach out to you after the session?
Okay, so let me not lie. I have a Twitter account, but when you ask me about my Twitter handle, I still cannot remember. I will not lie. So most times I just go to my Twitter and just copy and paste. I just
Yeah.
send it to somebody. So I'm not sure about it. But on LinkedIn, you can always connect to me. Like Emmanuel or Micheal, one of the two. When you start finding me there, you see me, right? On
Yeah.
Instagram, I am Workaholic. That's my name on Instagram, Workaholic. WALKA.
Mm-hmm.
Workaholic. But I don't put anything about design on my Instagram. I don't have pictures. You get, and if you want to hit me
Yeah.
up on Instagram, I will not reply because I'm hardly there. But LinkedIn is my powerhouse. That's where you always connect to me. I'm always on LinkedIn 247. For those that know me,
Okay.
I'm 247. Right.
Okay. Okay. So guys, that's what you're hearing from Emmanuel's mouth. If you need to ask any questions and you don't probably want to ask here, you can always reach out to him on LinkedIn. So while you were talking, someone asked a question in the comment section. They were saying how that you can tell them tools that you use to measure some of these metrics.
Yeah. So let me give you one that some we use at my place of work. We use Google Analytics sometimes. Right? We use Google Analytics, but there are a couple of other ones, right? So if you need to get this, you can reach me on LinkedIn. I'll give you a couple of things that you can use. I can send you a couple of things. I think
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I'll take it then. Okay. Somebody is saying, are you open to mentorship? Do you want to
Let
mentor
me know.
newbies?
I don't think I'm at that point in my life yet, right? And that's the honest truth. I don't think I'm at that point in my life. So I know a couple of people would say, "Oh yeah, I would want to mentor you," but one, I'm a very, very into myself person, and I'm still working on that. So I wouldn't want you to reach out to me 1,000 times and I will not answer, and then you feel maybe I'm proud. It's not like that. Sometimes my anxiety level is mad. I've seen messages, I'm scared. You get so well. Yes, I would. Maybe not now. Maybe when I get to that point and I'm sure that okay, I don't sabi this work small. Yes, I can now do it. But for now, I'm like you. We're still in the same shoe. But yes, if you need help with anything, I'm available. I'm open to help. Yes, you can
Okay.
reach out to somebody on your project. Yes, you can.
Okay. So if we have small questions and we need your opinion, we can
I
always,
did.
you know,
I, I did for you. I swear I did.
so
I
make you
did.
know use mentor enter the, you know, make you
No,
just say,
no,
please,
no.
I need your advice.
Exactly. Just say that you have my I will jump. I will answer you. I know the Jonathan.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. We really
All right. Thank
appreciate
you,
you
guys.
making time to
Thank you, guys.
speak to us today. So before we go, there's one thing we do here. We try to take pictures to keep memories. So if you're in a convenient place, and that's others on the call, please would like you to turn your camera on so you can just quickly get a screenshot. Don't worry if
If I find
there's
people,
no light or
if I
something,
find designer,
something. So Toby, will you let us know if you've gotten a picture?
Yeah, Toby, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I'm here to take a picture. So, guys, your camera's on and smile.
so if I'm going to make up. I'm Anna, your mother.
Okay, perfect.
I'm Lego, I'm not your girl, Joe.
And now let's see your face now.
Oh, God. Yeah, see my face. This is as bright as you can get.
Yeah, I've gotten a couple of pictures.
All right.
Okay. So yeah, with this we are wrapping up. Thank you everyone. Michael, thank you. It was really nice speaking and learning from you. Thank
Thank
you
you so much.
everyone for taking out time to listen. I hope your expectations were met during this session, and we're looking forward to hosting you for our next section, same time, same place. How do they used to say it on all these talk shows?
Same
Same
time, same
time,
place,
same
and same
place,
station.
same station. All
Hey,
right,
good night. And have a
guys. Have
lovely day. Bye.
a bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Yeah.